Everybody, Andrew Cuneo here with another new standard Streets of New Capenna deck tech. I'm working on a Hinata deck, so Hinata Magma Opus, but I've also added another card that's very good with Magma Opus, Arcane Bombardment, which is the new Streets of New Capenna card that I'm trying out here. So this one, I've seen a lot of people trying to use this in a lot of different contexts. What it does is it makes it so that if you start casting a flurry of instants or sorceries, you just kind of win the game over the span of 2 or 3 turns. You start accruing so much value. So the reason that I've been hesitant about some of the other builds of that deck is that this card is really weak to Vanishing Verse. So my thought process behind this deck was, what if I added another powerful combo that's going to be good against the slower white-black decks and is also immune to Vanishing Verse, which is this Hinata plus Magma Opus combo that existed in the previous standard, but it wasn't one of the top decks. So really this is a test to see if kind of melding these two decks together yields a better result than we've seen so far from the two of them separate. Some of the other new cards I've got going on here, Big Score. This is an upgraded version of Unexpected Windfall. It just costs a single red to cast. That's the only difference. I've only got 4 of these in my deck. I haven't gone crazy with, trying to play even more copies of this. One thing that is really nice with this card, in addition, when you get it going with Arcane Bombardment, in addition to fueling additional spells, it's also giving you additional treasures, so you can use the spells that you're finding off of the copies. Pretty much once you get an Arcane Bombardment that's got a big score under it, if you just cast 2 or 3 more spells, you're going to have the ample resources to win. A couple copies of Burn Down the House. That is a very effective sweeper in Standard at the moment because there's so many Planeswalkers that are being played beyond just Ob Nixilis. There's, the Wandering Emperor, Lolth. This is a very clean answer to most of what you want to answer. The only real weakness is it doesn't get Wedding Announcement and it doesn't get Asika's Chariot. But it does clean up the tokens that those cards produce, so it does something in those cases even. Looking at the rest of the 1 and 2 mana plays, I've got Strangle, which is another new Streets of New Capenna card. I think this is probably the best of the 1 mana removal spells if your deck doesn't make enough artifacts to make Voltage Surge good. It's possible Flame Blessed Bolt is going to be better. One thing to note is I don't have any copies of Spikefield Hazard in my deck because I'm playing 4 Strangles, and there's somewhat of an overlap in between what you would want to Spikefield Hazard and what you would want to Strangle. Also, it just doesn't seem like there's that many 1 toughness creatures really being played anymore in the top decks, so I don't know that you really need the Spikefield Hazards or that they're actually going to have good targets all that often. I only have 1 Galvanic Iteration in my deck. A lot of people tend to play more of this. I've never really been happy having tons of copies of this card in my deck because you just get a bunch of hands where you just have lots of Galvanic Iterations and you don't have anything to copy. That's never worked out well for me in the past, so I'm only trying 1 here. Got a little bit of permission in the form of Negate and Spell Pierce that can protect my Hinata. These are not the best cards in the world to get under Arcane Bombardment, so there's a bit of an anti-synergy there. I think it'll still be fine, though. I do have the full 4 Jwari Disruptions. I've been pretty happy with this card. I think so much of Standard, so much of what most decks are trying to do starts at 3 mana, and when you're on the draw, Jwari Disruption can be really, really powerful. 1 Valorous Stance. This is a card that, can protect Hinata for 1 mana. It also gives me an answer to a Goldspan Dragon or Rafine. I found that a lot of the times when I'm building these blue decks and I'm trying to get them to be good against sort of the mid-range piles, be they Esper or Jund, that you wind up with a deck that's oftentimes pretty weak to Goldspan Dragon, especially out of like a blue-red deck that's, trying to do a combo with the Goldspan Dragon. So I wanted, a handful of cards that would at least give me a little bit of a game plan against Goldspan Dragon. So Valorous Stance is one of those. Jwari Disruption is one of those. In theory, you could, kill a Goldspan Dragon with Burn Down the House, or maybe you would get to the point where you could Magma Opus it. In practice, that's not really going to be a very effective way to win games. Looking at the lands, there's nothing too special going on here in the lands. The one thing I would say is that because I'm trying to do something that's so mana intensive between the Hinata, and I've got double red cards, and yeah, I've got Expressive Iteration, which can be kind of a color intensive spell in the sense that you want to be able to cast the Expressive Iteration and be confident you're going to cast whatever spells you hit off of it with the lands you leave untapped. So that's the reason that I haven't gone max pathways. I've kind of mixed pathways with the slow lands. I've also been a little bit sparing on the creature lands and the channel lands. I'm not playing a Sokenzan. I don't think the tokens would really do anything in this deck. I do think Otawara and Eiganjo are pretty powerful cards. Eiganjo is another one of the ways that I'm trying to get a little, like a tiny amount of answers to Goldspan Dragon into my deck. And then I've won Shatterskull Smashing. It's a pretty good card with Hinata. And it's just a good card in general. Going through the sideboard, I've got Annuls. Those are primarily going to be against runes, although you could board them in if you played against somebody who was playing like Wedding Announcement and a Seeker's Chariot, or they were playing a Seeker's Chariot and a Fable of the Mirror Breaker or something like that. If somebody has 8 really good targets for Annul, I think you could feel comfortable boarding it in, especially in a deck where you're going to have big score, so you could discard it if you really don't think it's going to be good. Although I will say, in spots like that, the Annul does kind of overlap with the Spell Pierce and Negate, so you might not feel like you can fit it in after sideboarding, and then I just wouldn't bother with it. Flame Blessed Bolts, these are going to mostly be against Tenacious Underdog. It's also nice just having additional 1 mana removal in case you play against like a white weenie deck with Thalia. Disdainful Strokes, lots of these. This is really another thing that I'm doing just because specifically of Goldspan Dragon decks, which I think that my main deck is kind of weak to them, so I wanted to have a lot in the sideboard against that. 1 Test of Talents, that's going to be against mirror-style decks mostly, like if they have big score, stuff like that. 1 Pithing Needle. I haven't really gotten a chance to try out very much of trying to use Pithing Needle against Ob Nixilis, so I wanted to try one here just to see. I don't feel strongly that it's going to be good, but this is really just a test it out kind of situation. 1 Malevolent Hermit. I really like this card when you play blue mirrors. I would have liked to have fit more in the sideboard, but I thought I needed the Disdainful Strokes more. And I like having at least 1 Test of Talents. Burning Hands, obviously, against green creature decks. You can also board it in against White Weenie if you feel like you need to. 1 Heated Debate. This is a card that is yet another anti-Goldspan Dragon card. It's also a reasonable answer to Rafine because the can't be countered text is going to get through Ward. 3rd Burn Down the House, and then 1 Hullbreaker Hard, just, you know, to have another card that is another strategy for how to play out the blue mirror matches. This is the way almost all my sideboards wind up working out in this standard, where I've really tried to slant my main deck to mostly be good against the mid-range decks, and then I feel like I'm kind of weak to the blue decks, and I'm kind of weak to the aggressive white decks. So I want a bunch of sideboard cards in both of those scenarios. And I guess also Runes is like a 3rd deck that I really want to make sure I'm addressing in the sideboard, especially when you've kind of tried to gear your main deck to being good against mid-range decks. You're going to have some holes against the Runes deck that you're going to be looking for the sideboard to patch up. That's the deck. Let's run it through another event. On the play, always nice. I have no red mana. The only early play I have is Spell Pierce, but if I do draw a red mana, this hand gets strong really quickly. I'm just going to go ahead and keep it. I think I'll lead on the Deserted Beach. There's a chance I draw an untapped red source, and I'm going to just leave Jwari Disruption up. And that chance has come through. Opponent started on basic plains, which is a somewhat unusual start. Certainly plains is a very unusual start. I'm going to sit on Jwari Disruption again. The main card that I'm thinking I might want to counter would be Adeline, maybe Wedding Announcement. It's just all plains. They might be playing. There's this like mono white, just all sweepers control deck. That might be what they've got going on. Okay. They'd seen enough of whatever it was that they were looking for, I suppose. Should I even sideboard? They're probably a mono white control deck. It's possible that they're a white weenie deck that had an unbelievably bad draw. I think I'm just going to leave my deck the way it is, though. Like, Negate and Spell Pierce are going to be fine against even a white weenie deck. They'll be able to hit the Wandering Emperor. I guess Strangle is one card that might be really weak if they're actually just playing the sweeper deck. So maybe I'll trim a Strangle and I'll play a Malevolent Hermit instead. There we go, I sideboarded. With this hand, I'm definitely going to be looking to... They put me on the play? This is a very strange match. How many cards are in their deck? They have the right number of cards, at least. Anyway, this is going to be a game where I'm definitely looking to cycle one of these. They have Story Seeker in their deck. This is not the event for you, my friend. Though my hand is quite bad. They might actually win. Glad I didn't board out all the Strangles. I would have been left with no answers to the Story Seeker had I done that. We're going to have a big decision this next turn. Well, I guess it's no longer a big decision. It's just play the Celestus and hope it doesn't get destroyed. Because I can go Celestus, Strangle. If I hadn't done that, I would have had to decide whether to cast my Expressive Iteration off the treasure, which probably I would have done. It might have gotten a little bit interesting if I'd drawn a land. Darking Roper, so they're just some sort of life gain deck. I'll probably be looking to, play big score so I have enough mana so I can just go Hinata, Magma Opus all at once. If I draw a land, I could also just go an untapped land. I could go Hinata, leave Negate up. Okay, can't do anything about that. That is the land I wanted. I suppose it's fine to leave the Celestus untapped. When you're getting mana from non-land sources, you sometimes want to just tap your non-land sources instead of your lands so that you're less exposed to people just trying to, get rid of your mana so you can't cast a counterspell. In this case, though, especially with Hinata taxing them one, I don't think it's really going to matter. Also, just the cards in my opponent's deck, I don't think it's going to matter. I'll bite. What's the plan? Seems unlikely whatever the plan is going to be good through a negate. Plan was a fortifying draught. Hope they do not have the Wandering Emperor. I maybe should have thought about that a little bit more. Wandering Emperor, exile your thing, untap my Lurking Roper is not a line I've ever seen before. It could be a good one. So I need to deal damage to 2 targets because I'm going to be tapping these 2. So we'll give this Combat Celebrant a taste, but not that much of a taste. Boy, was I wrong on the Malevolent Hermit being a good card to add to my deck. This isn't even the one that gains life. It's just the snow one. What's the plan here? Can't actually stop this. Oh, I could deal 1 damage to this and they wouldn't be able to attack with it. I think I'd rather kill the core Celebrant. I guess it's also possible I could just draw a card that does something off of this. Spoiler, I did not. The Lurking Roper's reign of terror continues. Actually, they just didn't attack with it. I don't even know what this card does. It's some sort of tap for mana thing. Oh, it taps for mana equal to the amount of life you've gained. Wow. That's potent. Not going to put too much thought into playing around what my opponent could have here, because I couldn't even name all the cards that would be in their deck. I'm on the play. Nice. And my opponent is conceded before doing anything. Excellent. This video is going great. Maybe my opponents are just planning to concede any games where they don't get to be on the play. Could be. Really could be. Thank you for showing up, Strangle. That could have been unpleasant. These are the colors of someone who is going to be good at destroying Arcane Bombardment. Is it a Rafine in my future? It is. My poor Arcane Bombardment, it wouldn't have even been able to come close to surviving through this Hopeful Initiate. Obviously setting up to play big score here. Don't make this thing a 3-6. That will disappoint me greatly. Alright. Are they going to counter this too? Spell Pierce. Obscura Interceptor. Ugh. Didn't enjoy that one. If only they'd put the counters on the commando. So I could draw my Valorous Stance. That would be a very good draw. Oh, this would be okay if I had another land. Is there anything I can do here? I can play big score again, hope to hit Strangle, and they don't have anything but lands. It doesn't seem very likely to be the case, but let's try it. It didn't work. So their deck had Thalia and Cathar Commando. And they had that Obscura Interceptor. I think I want all those. I think I probably want this. These seem quite bad. Spell Pierce is probably going to be bad against a deck that's playing with Thalia. I think I might want the Hullbreaker Horror. It's a little bit more durable through a Vanishing Verse. A little bit better at winning a long grindy game. It's more durable through a Vanishing Verse in that you can play an instant response to bounce it. Also, you can play it at the end of their turn if they're tapped out, and then you get to untap and get the effect of it. Whereas Arcane Bombardment, a lot of times, is going to need like a one-turn ramp up before it starts doing anything, which just makes it very easy to Vanishing Verse. I think it's very important to set that to blue there. If you think about what would happen if the top card of my deck was an Expressive Iteration and they hadn't just played a Thalia. This Magma Opus is about to cost 10 mana, I think. Yeah. I'm going to do this while they're tapped out. I don't want it getting Obscura intercepted again. I was hoping to hit more lands than 0 off of that. I think I can definitely win this game. I just need to make my land drops and just hard cast these Magma Opuses, and I think it'll be fairly straightforward. It's a good start. I could probably safely heated debate this. Not too worried about saving it. And they know about the burn down the house, so they're very unlikely to just, you know, play a second creature. Untapped land or Expressive Iteration, please. I don't think it makes any sense to try to just make 3 devils and start going beat down in this game. Like, I'm stalling until I can start resolving these Magma Opuses. Third Magma Opus was one of the worst possible draws, I'd have to say. Come on, land. Really don't want to be forced to crack one of these treasures. Oh, I used up a treasure. Doing that. That's still probably going to be fine. If I had not tried to tap the Legion Angel, I would have had a second treasure to, you know, do stuff with. Oh. All right, we need a land. We need a land very badly. My deck delivers.
Mission's compromised. Time to go.
Come on, Hinata off the top. Or Expressive Iteration. Those are the good ones. Burn down the house would also be a good one. The Celestus is not one of the good ones. It just leaves me dead. That was a slaughter. I got crushed by Obscura Interceptor twice. This has the potential to be a very fun game. I say no to Sorulf, the Realm Eater. These realms remain uneaten. Probably just tap out for Hinata next turn. See if they have an answer. Actually, I'm not going to do that because this looks like the kind of deck that could have Binding of the Old Gods in it. Which, Binding of the Old Gods, it doesn't cost an extra one to target. And now that I have the Negate in my hand, I don't really need to play that aggressively. Why do I trust the auto tapper? I have to use a treasure to negate now. So they have Chariots, Invoke Despair in their deck. It's like kind of a green-black control deck, it looks like. Interesting. -1 treasure for me due to carelessness. So I think I want Hullbreaker Horror. I think Pithing Needle actually stops Shigeki. That might be interesting. The channel ability is an activated ability. The channel ability is the one I'm talking about. It obviously stops the ability where you just pull you know, you use it to flip a land. Strangle seems quite bad. They had Binding of the Old Gods and Chariot, but they also have Invoke Despair, so I think Disdainful Stroke is going to be the one I want here. Some amount of Burning Hands wouldn't be the worst. Valorous Stance, probably no. A Galvanic Iteration wouldn't be that, or a Burn Down the House. I don't know why I said Galvanic Iteration. Burn Down the House wouldn't be the worst, but I don't know that I need two. I want to have Spell Pierce in my deck. Seems fine. Maybe I don't need the Hullbreaker Horror in addition to all these Arcane Bombardments. Let's just play only Bombardment. Probably start with this as a land. It's not a very good spell against this style of deck, and there's no reason to potentially take 3 later on in the game when I didn't need to. Oh, they have old Rutstein, old Rutsy. That Shigeki is going to be a problem. I 100% played the wrong land. Wasn't paying attention. Maybe these Arcane Bombardments aren't good when I boarded in this much permission. It's going to be really hard to take huge advantage of the Arcane Bombardment when it just has a bunch of Disdainful Strokes under it. It's kind of like they're fixing my graveyard for me for this Arcane Bombardment. I'm definitely praying for no Binding of the Old Gods. No Go Blank here. Although they can just Shigeki back the Go Blank and then I would be sad. And the Shigeki is... It's going to be rough. Maybe I can find Burning Hands, because they keep casting it, which maybe that means they have a second copy. If they have a second copy, this game's probably completely unwinnable. Somehow I knew that I was going to take a land off the second one. I guess the one thing I have going for me is I haven't drawn any Magma Opuses yet, and I've got 8 mana in play, so I could just start chaining Magma Opuses and just hard casting them all. That'd be a way to win. I need to practice with more with this deck. They got me twice with that. Not that it would have mattered, given they had Ray of Enfeeblement, but yikes, that's a rough one. Alright, Laltha is not a very powerful card against Magma Opus, thankfully. Still got a lot of problems to fight through, but I think this is maybe possible to come back from still. Oh, especially they made another Lalth thing. Shigeki the Jukai Visionary, you're out of here. Good job, Resolve All button. You're working great. It's another problematic card. But maybe a beatable card. Need to find some burning hands. No, do not like that. Come on, deck. Give me something good. More Magma Opuses. Burning Hands. Those are not the ones I was looking for. I think I'm going to want to play an untapped land, maybe. Alright, so sadly, this probably means they're going to get to Chariot another gigantic tree folk. Could still find Burning Hands here. I did not. Probably don't want to just trade the Hinata for the... Holy cow, that thing is gigantic. Cannot be countered. Wait, doesn't this had haste, but they used it to crew? Does that make sense? I don't know. Block. Block. Or you go to 3 life? I don't think I want to go to 3 life. Come on, we need a big score. Need another Magma Opus. Is that gonna be enough to win? Not if I attack like an idiot. Ugh. Reach. Bane of my existence. So I can do 2, 1, 1, 2, 1, 1. I screwed this game up. So I can't kill this. Yeah. That was, oh man, I stole victory from the jaws of defeat. think I probably would have been winning if I just passed and then been able to double Magma Opus in their upkeep to tap both the giant tree folk, deal them a little bit of damage. I could have done 4 to them. Definitely could have made it to the point where I got another turn with a lot more resources to work with. This has been a wild ride. Guess I'm playing this as a tapped land. One thing I have learned from this event, which I hadn't thought about before, but it makes perfect sense, is that Hinata is just kind of weak against Red Enfeeblement. So I've learned 2 things, if nothing else. I've learned that you need to be very careful with the auto tapper when you have Hinata in your deck. And I've learned that Hinata is not very good against Red Enfeeblement. I should have played this Expressive Iteration. That's fine. One thing I didn't touch on in the deck tech is that since I'm not playing one of the Streets of New Capenna guilds, I don't have a tri-land, which means that I actually don't have very many targets to get beside you. I have only this mountain, which fortunately I had not drawn. That would have gotten really ugly had I drawn it. You can't even Disdainful Stroke a cleaved dig up. It's not a legal play. Come on, lands. When I said come on lands, I meant come on untapped land, not come on 3 lands. Because this is a sideboarding game where they have Red Enfeeblement in their deck, I want to be a little bit more careful on how I'm setting this up. Okay. Like, there's no reason to play this over big score when I don't have anything to cast off of this right away, is basically what I'm trying to say. I think I don't want this land. But here now, even if they have Ray of Enfeeblement, it's not really going to help them that much. Both because I can negate it, and also I could just, in response, cast a Magma Opus, too. I think I'll negate that. Force them to have the Ray of Enfeeblement. Do I want to just fire this Magma Opus off? It cost me both my treasures. I don't think there's a need to do that right then. I'm going to leave the Otawara in my deck in case I somehow make it all the way back around and I need to use Otawara for something. I am going to cast this Magma Opus in their upkeep now. getting a partial discount, partially discounted Magma Opus. I will not let you have any fun, opponent. They wouldn't let me have any fun. I was going to finally get to start the bombarding. Final match. This has been... I don't know what to think of these events at this point. Played against two... Well, the first deck just wasn't a competitive deck. That green-black deck was a... I would say not a top-tier deck, but not an awful deck. And then I had one person just straight up concede to me. And I got completely crushed by Esper, which, I mean, getting crushed by Esper, I think that's useful experience, if nothing else. I would have liked to have gotten to play that match a few more times just to see if it really plays out that way consistently. I think my land sequencing is a decision not to play the iteration on turn... No, that was right. I played it on turn 3. It was the land sequencing on the Jwari Disruption, and then not hitting an untapped blue for the Spell Pierce is kind of brutal. I think it's not going to matter, though. I'm guessing their Mardu deck is not going to be very strong against me going big score into Hinata with counters backing it up, and then having Magma Opus to follow it up. Am I worried about another wedding announcement? I can still Spell Pierce it after this, which I think I'm going to do. So I'll be able to go Hinata with an untapped land, meaning I'll have access to either Jwari Disruption or 2-mana Magma Opus, both of which would be good things. This is a triggered ability, right? Another Magma Opus. How do I do it? This one's going to get cast on their upkeep now. You can maybe have the Wandering Emperor, but it's going to be too slow. So, am I fine with paying 4 for this? I think I am. The 2 damage, if I'd paid the 2-mana version, I could have still been able to cast big score. That's fine.
This is what you get for hurting my people.
I'll get to be able to, I can play Burn Down the House for 3 1/1s and just kill them. Alright, so they're probably playing Obnixilis, at least in their sideboard. They were definitely Mardu. So Wedding Announcement and Wandering Emperor. What else did we... Those were all the cards I saw. They didn't really do much that game. I think I want another burn down the house. I probably don't want this many Strangles. Maybe I want Flame Blessed Bolt over Strangle because they probably have Tenacious Underdogs. One Strangle isn't going to be the worst. Doubt they have enough stuff. I mean, they probably have Fable the Mirror Breaker, so in theory, having a Null in my deck would be fine. Maybe I want to over Valorous Stance. They're not going to have very good targets for Valorous Stance. Or I could try Pithing Needle. It's going to be against the Wandering Emperor and Obnixilis. Let's try that. Let's play no Strangles. Is that crazy? That's probably crazy. They probably have the Blood Tithe Harvester too. So let's do something like that. I think this is the right land to play first. The other option would be to play the Hall of Storm Giants. The only real reason that playing Hall of Storm Giants on turn 1 would be good is if I drew my second Hall of Storm Giants. Right, this is a card that I wasn't thinking about when I sideboarded. Strangle would be looking pretty good right about now. If I'm really lucky, what they do with their turn is they hit me for 4 and then they play Casualty to Obnixilis. If not, I'm going to wind up having to Otawara this Luminarch Aspirant, I think. They've gone underneath the underdog. Start fighting our way through these Rave Enfeeblements. I think we all know they're coming. Looks like they have the Wandering Emperor. The Wandering Emperor. It's not a great timing for me for when I can use this Otawara. Well, if they do that, it works out. I would have had to use it in their first main phase to have the trigger not go on the stack. And if I did that, then they could have just recast Luminarch Aspirant. I'm very surprised they did not put the counter onto the Tenacious Underdog so it would be big enough to trade with a Hinata. Like, I'm at 5 and this was already dealing 5. I'm not sure I really understand the value of getting it to deal 6. I'm not going to trade here. I'm not even going to try. I don't even know what they could have. Guess that's the thing they could have. Pay one, that doesn't do anything. Come on, Flame Blast Bolt. Come on, Flame Blast Bolt. Second Arcane Bombardment, that doesn't do anything. Alright, I'm gonna go back to having an additional Strangle. I guess they didn't necessarily have the Wandering Emperor. It's possible that what they had instead was just the Strangles that they were playing. It's weird that they have Strangle in their deck after Sideboard, but that's the spell they cast. I'll delay my choice on the pathway, even though I could have probably safely played it on red. Alright, that spell's lining up good. This is awkward. If I draw a land next turn and just could play big score, it's going to be great. Or is it? That thing is annoying. This card is so good against the mana bases people actually play. Yeah, I think I'll save the Hinata. And that I don't have an immediate use for it. Come on, burn out the house, carry us to victory. Their hand is like some discard cards and potentially wedding announcement. That'd be kind of annoying. Laltha is not annoying at all. Should probably just draw a card. All right, that's a reasonable play. I mean, it's not going to look particularly good against Burn Down the House, but that's maybe a decent in-between play. Now I just need to draw Magma Opus or Expressive Iteration or Big Score. Any of those would be good. That counts as a good one. That was a good one. We're going to go for it all. So do 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. One, 2, 3, 4. Which of these targeting those two? I'll do these two. Take some damage here, but I'm getting a substantial board. And I'm actually going to be able to just block with the Hinata this turn. Maybe I shouldn't, because I could just go Bombardment, Strangle. I'm going to block. Now that they showed me they have the third land, they're pretty likely to just be able to play something anyway. They're able to play as an Obnixilis that's not going to do anything.
I'm gonna remake this in my image. Defy me, and you'll lose everything. Your punishment is my entertainment.
So I'm going to have access to blue and red mana for this. This, I've already made my land drop, so I'm not going to be able to
Don't think you
do anything with that. We'll kill these Obnixilises.
next time I'll cut you down.
Okay, I can't Spell Pierce that. Play something I can Spell Pierce. I'm trying to Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce, please. Can't Spell Pierce that. Play something I can Spell Pierce. Excellent. Three 1/1s for me, and a new card. So this is only going to actually cost 5 mana because of Hinata, giving me the the benefits of the bargain there. I'm not going to cast that Spell Pierce. We'll cast this. All right, we got to see the deck do its thing. Cool. So I was able to go over the top of a mid-range deck pretty easily that match. The Esper deck did not work out that way at all. That Obscura Interceptor really got me, which I think that's not a good card, but it's obviously going to be a good card if you're playing against somebody who's playing cards like Magma Opus and Arcane Bombardment. So maybe it has its spots. Anyway, some ideas for deck to keep trying, and I will catch you guys next time.